Hey guys, Memphis here. Just a friendly Canadian reminder to keep force spying, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube.
Right, this is going to be episode 67 of Counterpoints. If you haven't figured out by now, it's fucking hard to get top CSGO pros to come on shows in general. And actually, here's probably the saddest part is it's usually not even worth it. Like a lot of them, probably the saddest thing about pro players is I've had so many, even in other games, where the ones who privately sometimes are amazing to talk about the game with, then you just put them on camera and either they're too shy or some of them just don't want to give any of those opinions in public, you know, they won't criticise another player. Like I had someone, I won't say who's a fucking legend, a player who actually is one of the only people who seems to share the same opinion as me, which is when I watch the team, you probably love them. Actually, that's being harsh, Max. I don't know if you love them. I would guess someone like Sam would love them. So you know the mighty Avangar. Well, who is of course the best player of Vanguard? You know the answer, Max. Who is it?
I don't know. I didn't watch a Vanguard's game because
I'll give you exactly. That's why I said it wasn't actually you. It's basically this guy who does literally just bait everyone with the AWP the whole game long. Like it's actually it's amazing because no one calls him out for it, but he actually is a mad baiter. So like, it's one of the only pros that agree with that. But the guy would never say it on camera. So anyway, we've got Max here because one of the good things about having journalists and analysts set on is they make their living off opinions. Like if too late now, the horse is already bolted. If you're going to try and like button it up and be all like, I want everyone to like me now. Because that doesn't work, does it? Like,
yeah, you're fucked.
You know, like you literally can't have a professional opinion about a team like Na'Vi without hurting someone's feelings. Probably someone who shouldn't even be there anymore. But then again, feelings are feelings. So anyway, here's where I want to start. I've built all that up because I want to start with an interesting discussion about ENCE, right? But one of the problems with discussing this team is around the team is all this awesome underdog story atmosphere, right? Where, you know, they started the year as like nobody had them as an elite team. Then they've done all these great things since then. Final of the major, final of this Blast Pro Series, winning the Blast Pro Series, stopping Astralis' streak, and all this great stuff. So the problem is when you have an underdog team who accomplishes all that so quickly, I'm not surprised that like the fans have just gone nuts. Because if you know anything about how fans work, what they do is all the time their team isn't on top and the other rival fans are telling them like, oh, your guys are shit, you know, we're going to beat you, whatever. The problem is the second that your team breaks through, you want to talk shit to all those guys and be like, oh, see, what, you said Na'Vi was better. What, you think fucking Faze Clan's better? No, ENCE is better than them all, blah, blah, blah. And so at the moment, I actually want to know where people really think this team sits at. So Moses, you were there at the Blast event in Madrid where they both stopped the Astralis streak and 2-0 Astralis and won an event off them. So like a pretty historic moment in that context. What do you think of ENCE at the moment? Like, where are they at for you?
Oh, you've really hurt me with this one. I actually didn't see the final in Madrid because my mom was in town, so I was doing Mother's Day dinner. But with ENCE, I mean, one thing that strikes me with ENCE is how they play really well together. Like their communication in like mid rounds must be so good because I think they do so good at calling in the mid round situations and like in 3-on-3s and things like that. Like right before the bomb gets planted, when the opening picks and the opening map control has all been decided, they do really, really good in that scenario. I think they're very good. I think they're a top 5 team, and I think the impressive thing about them is we built up Sergey to be such a star because he showed so much good stuff. But now that they've gotten to this level, like, I feel like he's not necessarily.
They don't need him, man.
Yeah, he's not as big of a star as everyone thought he was out to be. Mm-hmm. Before the major, I heard rumors. I was being told, as soon as the major's done, X7's getting cut and he's going to be brought in.
Yeah, that was supposed to be a done deal, I think, as far as I know, yeah.
X7's been Sunny. X7 and Sunny would be brought in for him. That's what I heard like at the major in Katowice. And X7's been amazing. He's super fucking clutch. Ariel's fucking wild. They just have a really solid team. And Sergey doesn't even seem to like be needed to be this like badass star, even though he has that kind of connotation around him. Even Alu is just like the grizzled veteran who doesn't have to put in great performances consistently, but has like his maps where he pops off or his impactful clutch. So I think this is just a super well-rounded team. And if you look at it in that sense, it's actually kind of reminiscent of Astralis, where you have like 5 players, where you have like one guy like Device who's like super consistent, obviously, but around him, the other 4 players, like a different one steps up to be that secondary star each different game. So this ENCE team, I think, is super deadly, and they do it in ways that is going to be very, very tough to beat down the stretch. So I don't think they're like God's gift to Counter-Strike. I don't necessarily think we're going to get like an ENCE, like, you know, a run of ENCE events where they just win everything or anything like that. But this is a really, really dangerous team, and I don't think you can overlook it anymore.
Sure. What do you think, Max?
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying. Like, as a team, I think my biggest fear with them was that they always felt like they could become like fragile or brittle in like really big games, and that they were capable of sort of falling apart. But then there was that best of 5 they had against Vega Squadron of all teams, where I was like, okay, like if you can win it like a full 5-map series against Vega Squadron, then chances are you're probably mentally strong enough to win like best of 3s against a lot of other teams. And so for me, that was sort of the tipping point of how I evaluated them, because I always knew as a team they're obviously capable of like putting up really, really good T sides if Ariel and Alexi B are on point. And so I was always, for me personally, I was always watching their T sides, and that's what defined their success or failure as a team. And we saw in Blast what happens when like Ariel just pops the fuck off, because apparently he's the like highest paid Finnish player, like in a move.
Oh, okay.
Like in terms of, at least that's what I read on the website. And so I think from the perspective of ENCE, he was a player that they really wanted to make as a star, and he was going to be sort of a focal point of how the team was going to like be set up. And so to see him have a big event in Madrid is obviously good to see. It's like the realization of his role within the team. And yeah, so for me, it's always been about like whether or not Ariel and Alexi B can pop off and fire on T side, because if they can get going, they're going to be the types of players who buy space for someone like X7 and Sergey to close in the mid to late round. And yeah, so, and it was also Madrid. It was their CT sides that actually just fucked Astralis on Nuke as well. So for me, it's like a pretty dangerous team for sure. And the Astralis comparison that Moses made isn't actually as ridiculous as it seems, because if you look at like which is fair, like Allo and Device are sort of like, you have to stretch a long fucking way, but it's like Allo and Device similar in some senses, like X7, Zipnik similar.
You just started doing like a comparison. So you did Allo and Device, and then who were the other ones?
So I don't know, like the main point I'm trying to make is that they are a well-rounded team, and that they're not like they're not like other tier 2 teams in the sense when you historically think about tier 2 teams, you think of a side that has like 1 or 2 like really high impact players that are capable of like occasionally dropping 100 ADR and then like getting an upset in a tournament, and then like sort of burning out over the course of like a full tournament run. But ENCE has enough win conditions for me, both on an individual level and as a team level, in the sense that like Alu can have a big game, Ariel can have a big game, Alexi B, like every single player can have a large, even X7, like you're saying, Moses, can have a large enough game that they can be dangerous throughout the entire sort of play of a tournament. And they can be dangerous in series. They can be dangerous against many top teams. Against Astralis, they can play fast. They can play disrespectfully, and they can like beat Astralis just as fast as they can like play a structured T game and sort of not get upset by teams like sort of towards the bottom end of the top 10. That's like a really important distinction, because if you're Fnatic, you might be able to like catch Astralis off guard in a best of 1 or a map like that, but then you can just as easily fall. Like they lost in EPL recently to who'd they lose to?
It would be MDL, right?
Yeah, no, in EPL they lost to Optic, right?
They can't be in EPL if they're in MDL though. So maybe in ECS, maybe?
They're in neither now. They dropped him.
No. Optic just lost to Fnatic. I mean, Fnatic lost to Optic in EPL 2 days ago.
Okay.
In Group A. And, after like playing Liquid in that crazy best of 5 in Sydney.
Right. I see. Oh, I thought you were talking about ENCE.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No.
Got lost
I'm
on
trying
that.
to make the comparison. Yeah. Yeah. A bit scattered right now. Try to bring it all together. But yeah, so it's like, to me, ENCE is that type of team who I feel like are going to be a consistent top 5 force, because they can bend their game to a lot of different types of opponents. They can win from a lot of different places, and they can do so consistently. And so they sort of, to me, because of that, and because that criteria of being flexible with their win conditions, sort of define themselves apart from the rest of the tier 2 and like are in that top 5 category for me now. Because it's not just about like the results, it's about how you get those results, and about how you like within the context of your team and within the context of the rest of the scene, how you win games. And so ENCE for me in that sense are for sure a top 5 team.
I'm interested that both of you, like, this is the difference for fans between analysts and how fans think, which is when both of you just said that they're definitely a top 5 team, I already know right now, because that's why I let you two go first. People are going to think that I'm like the ENCE hater and I'm biased, blah, 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 because I famously made that tweet at Star Series where I said ENCE is the most overrated team in the world. And by the way, just for clarification, what did they do right after that? Get banged straight out in the quarterfinals of the tournament by a team that everyone told me they definitely wouldn't lose to because they'd just beaten in the major. And yet somehow, don't ask me how it works in fans' brains, somehow actually, Matt, I actually lost that one, Max, and every time ENCE ever wins a game, it makes time reverse, like in fucking Endgame, and you go back in time, and that tweet was wrong, even though explicitly and by every objective metric, I was right, and I won that one, and you can't ever take it away from me because of the linear nature of time, which indeed we can't travel back in, only hack movie writers think so. Or people who've just seen all of time. I mean, I could just be like fucking Bran from Game of Thrones, just know everything and not say it to you, but how would that help? So anyway, this is the point, right? What I want to ask you both before I go into my thoughts on ENCE is this. When you say they're a top 5 team, definitely, I take that as you're giving them a compliment. You're saying, like, they're definitely, like, in the elite class of teams, you know, like, obviously, there's only been a few months when they've been in 2019. We haven't had that many tournaments overall. Like, are they just top 5? Are they contending to topple Astralis? Whereabouts within that do you want to pinpoint any further than that? Do we just leave it at that?
I mean, for me, it's hard to say that they're going to like topple Astralis's era or anything like that. But it's nice to finally have a contender who can actually beat Astralis. You know, like Na'Vi can do it. It's just they're up and down. Do we what Na'Vi are we going to get in that day? Liquid haven't proven that they can do it, even though just winning Sydney, even and Astralis wasn't there. So, I mean, it's just nice to have a team that we know there's a lot of teams that can beat Astralis. It's just cool to see ENCE actually fucking do it. Like no one else has done it yet. So I mean that's quite nice, or done it for some time. So for me, I didn't put ENCE in the category of top 5 until just recently because you can't just take the run at the major and be like, oh look at this team, they're going to be top 5. This is how good. You need to see the longevity. And for me, it's been enough months. It's also a benefit of something like where MIBR hasn't made any strides forward. Na'Vi has kind of been treading water. Fnatic's getting better, but not quite there yet. So, I mean, they also have the benefit, a lot of these teams who have been in the top 5 over the past year, actually losing ground. And they've looked much, much better than the Phases, than the MIBRs. So they've had a little bit of a benefit of some teams dropping off, but I mean, you can't fault them for that whatsoever. Certainly they're playing like a top 5 team right now. And I think it's going to be interesting to see, because the next progression, right, is always they're good enough now to start getting direct invites to events. So we're going to be seeing ENCE more and more and more at all these different events. They're going to start getting invites to the ESL events in like New York, Chicago, all these things. So I think we're going to be able to start seeing and actually put them in the proper context of when they're actually on the professional grind at the professional circuit where they haven't been at the beginning of the year. How are they going to play? And for me, I look at them and I say they're gonna stand up just fine. I think they're gonna hold up just fine at these big events, especially with the busy schedule. And I'm actually super happy to see them drop out of MDL. Like, get the online games out of there. We'll just see you at events.
What do you think, Max?
Sure, and because it's like the mouse sports effect from last year, right? Where it's like this team can rise like through playing greater than some of their parts, from like the depths of tier 2 Counter-Strike to like winning some big events, like being able to upset elite teams. But then the very second that they get up there and they start getting all these invites, then suddenly teams can like watch all their games and figure out how they play and how they're able to win matches. And then it's like, for all the invites you get, that's just more data for other teams to counter you. And so that's why when I was outlining before, like when you're evaluating a top 5 team, you can't just look at the results. You have to look at how they get the results. And to me, ENCE is a team that's flexible enough and they're able to like dip into the pots of many different types of win conditions that like even if they're on the high level of like professional play, being invited to all these different events and like potentially like having their games viewed by like other elite teams, I think that they should be able to like pivot to enough different styles to still like be dominant.
Sure. I mean, I agree in the general sentiment with both of you. Like, I think there's clearly a top 5 team. I mean, you'll notice some of the context that they basically explain, which I agree with, is, to be fair, some of the other top 5 teams obviously have like fatal flaws and probably need roster moves. And, that's actually why I actually like the pull you did there of Mouse Sports early 2018, because I see ENCE in a similar manner. Like, this is the team where the difference was in the Mouse Sports case, obviously they had quite a lot of fragging from some of those players. I would say on the ENCE side, it's less fragging. It's more like they have a really great tactical style. Like, I would say in terms of like actual control of rounds, they've got to be one of the best in the whole game. Like, you've seen some of the games they've played. They look really impressive when they have everything in effect. They're not just shooting you in the head. It's not like you just think, oh, it's impossible. They shot me in the head when I came around the corner. It's none of that shit. So that's actually why, this is what's weird. On the one hand, I actually am probably more impressed with ENCE, as far as I can tell, than their fans, because in line with what Moses said, I don't really think they have that many sick players on this team. Like, what I think is good is they have good players, and amazingly, they found good players across the board. That's the craziest part. And all those players, like Moses outlined, fit their current role. Like, that is incredibly rare for a team outside of the top 4 or 5 in the world. And in fact, the whole reason normally the top 4 or 5 in the world do it is because you just have the best players in the world. You have like the best players from your country or in the region or whatever. It's like you can build that team. This doesn't even look like it was built. It just here from the beginning. So that in itself's crazy. Like, if I had to look at ENCE now, I agree with Moses as well. The original hype, I remember when I was at the Star Series Season 6 at the end of last year, where a lot of the big teams skipped it and then they ended up winning, the one that you were talking about where they beat Vega Squadron. At this tournament, Sergey had like MVP numbers, so what everyone immediately did was go, right, put him in the category with, the Simples, Nikos. Yeah. Whereas I have to say, I definitely agree with you, Moses. A couple of their best runs, Sergey wasn't even the best player on the team. Like, he's not like a Ziwu type motherfucker who has to drop 30 every game just to give you a chance of winning. That doesn't even happen that often. So if I looked at their team, right now, I don't know if I'd pick anyone to be a top 10 player in the world. So the idea that this team not only is beating Astralis in best of threes, they're getting so deep into that's fucking amazing. Like, if anything, the person I am the most impressed with in this team, and I realise memes have ruined this, but I don't care about memes, it is Alexi B. I think he is the most impressive player in this team in terms of what he's doing to the squad. It's fucking ridiculous. Like, this isn't even just gimmicky. Like, Renegades I have a lot of love for as well, but theirs is a little bit more gimmicky when I watch them play. Like, Az is a very, very new in-game leader. You can tell he's still working with Kassad. Like, there's still like a transition players in there. So part of my problem is the reason even though I would agree, once you start really breaking down that top 5 and trying to figure out who's 3, 2, 4, 5, like, you know what, ENCE probably does get solidly, maybe they're 3 or 4, it depends where you see Na'Vi at the moment. I haven't played in a while. I personally would put Team Liquid second. I think if you look at the resume, look at some of the wins. My big problem with ENCE is like there's 2 factors, 3 I guess. One, and I'm not hating on ENCE here, I'm actually hating on Astralis, which is, unfortunately, it does take a bit of the appeal away of you ending the Astralis streak on Nuke and 2-0ing them, something that almost never happens. I think Astralis had only ever lost 3 series ever where they got swept. The fact that happens when all they've done is play the 3 blast events and they haven't been to the really big format events, that seems a bit convenient, doesn't it? That's when you roast them in that sense. So I don't know that Astralis was at their absolute peak. This wasn't like era-defining Astralis. Still a good team, obviously. Then secondly, the other factor, and this might sound like an obtuse point, but if you think about it, it's a very reasonable one. So for example, when I made that point to people in my video about Astralis' era ending, the point that doesn't mean Astralis isn't the best team. It doesn't mean I wouldn't pick Astralis to win the next major. The point is, if you really just haven't played tournaments in 3 months, you can't say you're the best yet because you have to keep proving it. It's a thing you prove every day. It's a thing you prove every tournament. That's what made them number 1 in the past. It wasn't that we all just said, well, they're really good. No, someone could say, right, look, they've won 4 of the last 6 and, they were all the 5. You go down the numbers, don't you? Well, here's the problem I have with ENCE. It's a similar problem. Is the major run is sick. Obviously, that's a sick run. Yeah. Almost making the final of that blast. I think it was the Sao Paulo one. That was pretty decent, but that was just best of 1s. Star Series was all best of 3s, so fair play. They did well in the Swiss system, but like I say, they got beat by Na'Vi. Okay. And then this one, the Blast Series, they went to the final, they played the series there. The problem they have at the moment is just proving it, just repeating what they've done so far. So what I need them to do is go to a couple of big tournaments, so a DreamHack, an IEM. Go to these tournaments where you have to win like 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 best of 3s. If you can win those and get top fours and finals and wins, then you've done it. Then you have proven, you've taken what you've done so far, you've repeated it, you've proven through experiment that it's accurate, and then you will immediately, I guarantee you will immediately from everyone get your status as number 2 and number 3 in the world. Then people will start talking about you as potential champion, etc. The problem is at the moment, they did it at the major, the others, it's like they did and they didn't, the format wasn't there. They didn't, you can only beat who was in front of you, but they just didn't have the chance to. And the problem is the Star Series one was the only other event they went to because they weren't at Sydney either. So I just need to see them actually do it, because unfortunately, I always described the scene as like a competitive ladder. Until you've been to that position, you can't say, well, I would do that because I beat this team elsewhere. If that excuse worked, Team Liquid would have like 5 championships now. Everyone except Astralis, they can murk. That's why I think actually you see the contrast in fan thinking when you look at ENCE and you look at Team Liquid. Because fans go, Team Liquid, what did they do? Just win IEM Sydney with no one there. Okay, show me ENCE going to a tournament that has just only 6 to 10 teams, and show me them winning it. They haven't had the chance to do it yet is the point. That's the point. It's very well to go, Liquid has all these asterisks. ENCE doesn't even have the asterisks. They've only done it at the Blast and then once at the Major. So you've got to unfortunately do it, because there's been a lot of teams in history who looked like they could do it. They had the players to do it. They teased you. I think of Big when they did that ESL1 Cologne run. It looked so legit at the time. Quickly fell apart. Also, so even though I don't think that it'll be as much of a drop for ENCE, I actually think they probably can do it. But I will say this as well. One of the downsides I do think is, like I say, it's obviously built into what I said. If they're so good and they're so tactically sound and all that's there, but they don't have the top players, we can see the obvious way they can lose a series, which is the other team outfrags them. That actually happened at Star Series. They lost the best of 3 to Vitality for exactly that reason. And Vitality is hardly like the craziest firepower team. No, they've got Ziwu. Yeah. That's mainly it, depending on what the map is, So, I'm not hating. I'm just saying that, they will lose tournaments. They definitely won't be the number 1 team, I would say. But this is probably the biggest positive. They look like the consistency should be very high. I don't think many teams will beat them in series. And as you said, a great point you make is, obviously last year, Team Liquid, Na'Vi, all these teams in theory could have beaten Astralis. They all had the pieces. It's just most of them never did. You're right. Just someone doing it is cool enough. Just someone actually doing it.
I mean, and Na'Vi beat him at Cologne, I think, and outside of that, it was like fuck all. So I mean, fair play to ENCE. Also, I mean, it's also the difference between overreacting. If you're one of the people who thinks that Liquid's trophy in Sydney doesn't mean anything because there weren't enough top teams, or they had 6 of the top 10 teams there. What more do you Yeah, you obviously want to have Astralis there, you want to have the Na'Vis there, but that's pretty fucking ridiculous to have 6 of the top 10 teams and still lift the trophy. Once you get into this top 10, any of these teams, Renegades, NRG, MIBR, FaZe, NiP, Fnatic, those teams, while we don't consider them always contending for a championship, they can always have a series where they beat pretty much anyone outside of maybe Astralis, right?
Sure.
You're not going to say that there's no chance Fnatic upsets Liquid or no chance Fnatic upsets ENCE or Na'Vi or anything like
Definitely
that.
Definitely not now.
Chance.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, well, certainly not after the event, but so I think that was a super. I mean, it's just about tempering the highs and lows, right?
Yes.
So for me with ENCE, it's just been a matter of ever since that run at the major, and then you say, well, can they actually replicate it? And they've only had really one chance to replicate it at Star Ladder. I enjoy the Blast events, and I understand where you come from. I'm not as harsh on the Blast events as everyone else is, but it's obvious that there's going to be a disconnect between how well you do in a Blast event and how that can translate to your actual.
It's just not as impressive. It counts. Yeah. Everything counts. I always tell people everything counts. It's just to what degradation.
It's just a matter of how much. Yeah. So they've only done 2 Blast events in the Star Ladder. So I mean, ENCE is a team that hasn't established themselves as a world beater. So it should be no surprise that they go to a Star Ladder and don't necessarily win it. But, I mean, once you go into the future, we have them coming up. They're going to be at Summit? Sure. They're going to be in Cologne. They're invited to. Plenty of events still for them to prove themselves and climb those rankings. So it's just nice to see someone, maybe because they're Finnish and they just have no, emotional fear or whatever it might be, actually take down Astralis and not be fazed by the fact that Astralis is so good.
Yeah, I think that there's enough memes around ENCE that you can sort of still market them in some way. Because it's almost like the Russians in MMA that just refuse to learn English despite being one of the best fighters in the world, and then you're just the UFC, just how the fuck do we get this guy from Dagestan to talk? It's the same thing with ENCE, just literally the worst people to interview on the planet. But in terms of their Blast result,
by the way, I will also tell people, just as a note, because I know people have taken this too far, is I don't know if you're actually aware of this, Max, but when they do those interviews, you're right, a lot of them are young and obviously haven't got much media experience, but I don't know if fans actually understand that they are actually playing that up even more. Like, they think it's a joke. Like, you have to understand, Finns themselves like the joke that Finns have no emotion and, you know, they all have the terrible rallying the English. They like that joke. So believe it or not, like, that's why... You know, like, remember when Sonny was in Mouse Sports and they literally drove that fucking "I'm feeling thank you" joke into the ground. It's so dead at this point in time that only the fucking Night King could bring it back. Like, that's how bad it is. Like, you know, they just hammered that joke a million times until eventually it was like, that's not even funny anymore, dude. Like, I agree, they're really tough to market, but they also, at the moment, because they're still they're an underdog team, they are overplaying that angle. Like, they did definitely, like Alexi B, for example, could give way better answers than he's giving in these interviews. He's playing up the angle of like, yes, we won because I've killed them in the head. It's like that's just them trolling you a little bit, guys. They're not really that extreme, I'll tell you that.
I interviewed X7 at DreamHack Winter, and I was doing it for HLTV. And then after the interview, I like counted the words, and I had more words than him, like in the final interview. And I sent it to him. I'm like, do you even want to like publish this, man? Like, it's fine, bro. You don't have to publish this interview. But I don't know. It's like you have to going back to Blast. People were so quick to dismiss Astralis's wins at Blast and the fact that they could like go flawless in the group stage. I can't remember the exact name of the event, but they had the flawless group stage one, then won the event over Liquid 2-1 in the best of three.
I think that was Sao Paulo.
Yeah, Sao Paulo. And but like, if people aren't going to be like,
I think ironically, I'm the only person who knows which all the events were. There've been too many. That's the problem. To remember the stop's the hard part.
They all blend together for me. I don't.
But it's just like, if people aren't going to jump to like say how crazy it is that Astralis can completely sweep that field and then like beat Liquid in that best of three, and credit them for that win, then it's like pretty crazy to then like go the other way.
Yes, you've got to give the devil his due, as it were. Yeah, exactly.
And so it's like, even though ENCE did get this like best of one result in the groups and the best of three in the final, and they played very confidently against Astralis, ended the nuke run, it's still a Blast event, so you still have to take it with a grain of salt in some ways. You know, if you're not going to give Astralis their due praise if they win, then you can't really give them a super bad beating if they lose. You know.
That's the problem at the moment with the anti-Blast train, is that, you know, you're taking credit away from the teams who do well in those events because people are so mad at Blast at the moment, right?
Oh,
like,
sure.
you can't.
Those should be two separate issues. Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, you got to give. Yeah, go ahead.
I wrote a piece about it. It's like, it's still like, people complain about like best of ones as a system because of how volatile they are and how it's like, you don't really know like who's the best team because anyone can beat a best of one. But then you look at like fucking Astralis, like across their like first 5 Blast events, and they've won like 20 out of 25 best of threes, or like something retarded. And then it's like,
there's only twice they ever failed to make the finals, and I think they've played like 7 or 8 tournaments, so it's pretty impressive.
And so it's like, even in spite of how volatile the format is and how shitty the format is, they still win, you know, because it's like a team like Na'Vi or like Liquid or any of these teams should, in theory, just be able to like, on the right day, Simple just pops off in one afternoon. And then it's like, he can just single-handedly like win 3 best of ones for his team and just like take them to the finals. And then the best of 3 is whatever. But like, yeah, I know, I feel like there's a sort of gap in the consistency in which people evaluate Blast, because it's convenient when Astralis is the best team and everyone wants like Astralis to fail on some level. Credit wins, but then like I don't know, and then ENCE wins it, and then because they're a meme team, it's like part of the community in some sense. Then it's like everyone loses their shit over that. So I don't know.
Sure. I mean, I will say, for best of ones, some of the events, like some, obviously they have differing teams at each of the events, but some of the events have had obviously like the 5 best teams in the world in theory. So even if it's best of ones, it's still the best of ones you can play. So it does count for something, certainly.
Also, it is fucking hard to just sit down on a stage and play 4 best of ones and have to like win all of them.
Sure.
Like, it's not easy, even with like the fucking random factor. I mean, there's a certain element even where that many BO1s in a day. I'm not going to say it's more difficult than winning like a series of BO3s across a tournament, but
it's differently
all
difficult,
in one day. Yeah, it's in a different way. And it's like that deserves some fucking credit as well.
Yeah, and in Sao Paulo, I'm pretty sure like Astralis played like Dust 2 just like 4 times in a row. if my memory is right.
I think they do
like,
that at every blast, because I think they had a blast where they played all Dust 2s, and then I think recently it was like all Infernos or all, I don't know. They've specifically banned to play like one map throughout an entire blast.
Yeah, and so then you just play like 4 different teams on the same map, and so then you have to win against a different style, like just back to back to back. So you can't just sit there and have this crazy anti-stratting because you're playing the same like map but against 4 different teams. So I know that to me is like almost as crazy as like winning like some hectic bracket. The fact that you can win Dust 2 like 4 times in a row against like some of the best Dust 2 teams in the world. It's crazy.
I will say also, like, since ENCE themselves are one of the teams who ban cash, at the moment, they're one of the teams where it's just no change for them, because obviously no one knows yet if everyone's just going to ban Vertigo. So that's not a plus or a negative. It's just if you were a team, obviously, that loved cash, that's terrible for you. I'm just giving everyone that info. So that's the other angle as well in their team that I want to see is, like, the maps that they actually are a bit shaky on. Inferno's a clear one, if you've seen them play that. And then secondly, I mean, this applies to everyone, but obviously they're not gods on Dust 2. Like, they're up and down on that map. You know, they have good performances, they have bad performances.
They were really good on Dust 2, like, initially in their lineup, weren't they?
When they first came around last year, like in the summer or so, yeah, that was one of the maps they were getting the wins on Mouse and stuff, yeah. But the thing is, I could put it this way, this is why I'm interested if they meet Astralis again in a best of 3, because in this tournament, obviously, when Astralis had the choice, they picked Nuke because they've never lost Nuke. You know, it's our home map. But if you remember, last year especially, Astralis sometimes didn't even pick Nuke. They would alternate Inferno or Nuke, depending on what the opponent was. I reckon next time they play ENCE, they're just going to pick Inferno because that's actually not a very good map for ENCE. It's got some shakiness to it. So this is the sort of thing I want to see, like I say, at this summer's tournaments where we'll have the whole spread. Because then teams get a chance, like Carrigan with his mouse sports will get a chance to do the veto against you. All the different in-game leaders get their crack at it, and then crucially, if anyone gets something that's starting to work and they figure out, you know, this is the squeeze map, like if we get Dust 2 as the third map, you lose a few more of them, whatever it is. That's why I always say, like, the top teams, they're like fucking piranhas, mate. Like, you might think you're all right, but the problem is once blood's in the water, they fucking swarm. And that's why it's so brutal when the team has the Cinderella rise and then goes straight back down. That's the most depressing. Like, that drop down is really not cool. No one would write a story about that. So I actually don't think ENCE will suffer that, but they will certainly suffer some sort of like resistance from the top teams. And crucially, if they end up being one of the best teams themselves, that'll have to elevate them. They'll have to go to another level or figure out a new wrinkle or change up the map pool over time or something.
I'm really interested to see with Astralis when they play Nuke next, because I think, like, you obviously can never predict when they're going to lose on it, but it shouldn't be as much of a surprise. Like, if you look at the record, right? If you look at whatever record they have, that's going to be surprising when they eventually lose. But if you look at how often they actually get to play Nuke,
they don't play it very often, no.
No, and it's like the cycle of everything. And I remember the Brazilians talked about this when they had that train run. Is like no one will play them on the map. Yes. So then after a certain amount of time, you just stop practicing it, and then you eventually get rusty on it, and then someone gets better than you. And if you look at the Nuke on land for Astralis, I mean, before this ENCE loss, they played Giants at Madrid, but like, what the fuck are you going to care about that match? Then they had X3D Max team play them in April, and then you have to go back to the major where it was Complexity who played them on it, and Renegades who aren't known to be Nuke teams. Yes. So this whole year, it's like, who the fuck has Astralis been able to like brush up their Nuke against? So eventually that was surely going to happen. It's just
makes logical sense. Eventually you'll get weaker and you at least lose one game, for fuck's sake.
So,
you're supposed to win every time.
I'm really interested how shook that loss will make them, if at all. Are they going to continue to pick Nuke against most teams? Like, I wouldn't see why they would, but I can understand if they maybe lose a little bit of confidence because they haven't been practicing or playing it very often.
I'd be so fucking stoked if I was the Astralis sports psychologist. I'd be like, fuck yes, time to get paid. Like, here we go. The Nuke run's finally over, boys. Like, time to put that degree into work.
Oh, that's the other thing as well, right? The one thing I worry about with the whole Blastralis thing is that I don't want the players to feel as though like the community hates them and somehow that influences how they play. You know, that would be depressing because I know everyone loves to tout the legendary 2015 Fnatic who was just laughing when fans were booing them. But that is a very, very unique mindset. There's very few players, even champions, who can really handle that. You know, there's a lot of champions where they'll rattle you a little bit if they think the crowd's pulling against them or wants them to lose. Yeah. But I actually think this will actually play into their hands. Because first of all, they did just win everything. You know, you've got to find new ways to motivate yourself. For anyone who doesn't know, a lot of the like legendary sports stories of like Tom Brady or fucking Michael Jordan, where they trash talk people and they're like trying to get in people's heads and make rivalries, they actually do that. And they'll even admit in interviews, they do it to just generate inspiration for themselves. Like, they want to figure out a reason as to why, you know, the next up-and-coming quarterback, if it's Tom Brady, like, he needs to figure out a reason why that guy's too cocky and needs to be put in his place, and he's coming for, you know, so he's coming for what's mine and stuff. Because the point is, he's won a bazillion championships, and he's been in the playoffs every fucking year or whatever, you know. So, like, players like that, they need something extra. So I actually think, in a weird way, I could see this helping Astralis. Because, first of all, like I say, I personally think they had a little bit of ring rust because they only played the 3 blast events. So I think already they can be better than I saw at this last blast. And if anything, I think the fact that now people think they might have fallen off or they won't be as good means when they come back to full strength, they could just make a run this summer and be the fucking amazing team again. It'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Tell me something honestly, Duncan. Do you really? I haven't had a chance to watch your video yet on it. Do you really think the Astralis era is over?
Oh, absolutely. I'll give you the reason why. It's a very simple one. I think you'll even understand it. Just as Max said there. Right? When Astralis used to win a Blast Pro Series event, even going undefeated, were you like, holy shit, that's insane. You're the best team of all. No. So the fact that you weren't like that when they won is the same reason why, for example, ENCE doesn't go to the top of their rankings just for winning, right? So if all you did in a 3-month... This is the part people are missing, Moses, because people don't realise how fast the year's gone by. Remember, the major was in like... The major ended, I think, on the 3rd of March. Right? So Glaive said in his tweet that the next event for Astralis is ECS Season 7. I looked it up. ECS Season 7 starts June 6th. So that means the day ECS Season 7 starts, there will have been over 3 months since Astralis played a non-blast. So all they did in 3 months is play 3 blasts, win 1, make the final of another, and that's it. That's enough to keep an era going. Just 3 months where all I do is win a small event with 1 best of 3, and then I'll lose the best of 3 and win some best of 1s.
And they also...
I'm not here. The point I'm making here, Moses, is, like I say, I don't say they're not the best team. I don't say they wouldn't win. It's just that, you know, you have to maintain, is my point, you know. Like, there's no other team in history. You go back and look at Fnatic. People said this on Reddit. They were like, but Fnatic lost tournaments. They used to play, like, 4 lands in 2 months. What are you talking about, guys? The point is they could afford to lose because next week they go and win a DreamHack or an EPL or something, you know. Like, that's the point. I'm not hating. Like, for example, if Astralis sweep all the summer events and then win the Starlighter one, then maybe they have the coolest storyline ever where they had an era, it stopped for a 3-month span, and then they made another era. That'll be a cool summer. It's not my fault. I didn't make them sit at home for these blast events, boys. I'm just saying, I think it's unreasonable to say, oh, you know, and there's the other key part is it's not like there were only 3 blast events, Moses. They also did skip literally 4 tournaments. One technically hasn't been revealed yet, but they skipped 4 much more sturdy format tournaments. So that's like you didn't even win the 3 blast, and you didn't even go to the others. That's the killer for me. Because here's the difference: when all those fans said correctly, like, well, Fnatic lost to TSM in 2015, yeah, as in that, you know, they came second sometimes or top 4. Astralis effectively, I'm not being silly when I say they effectively came last place at every tournament they skipped. Effectively, Star Series, well, they don't get any ranking. If they'd have gone and even lost, they'd come at least top 8, surely. You know, like, these things do matter. Yeah. People don't realise. Like, if you don't think they matter, then there's no point having a discussion about rankings. Rankings aren't that important to people. So you don't have to. By the way, if Astralis really said to me, no, I don't really care about rankings, I don't care about eras, I just care about, you know, what I think of my team, I'd say that's fine, but it doesn't change my opinion. I do care about those things, you know.
And when you look at like SK in like 2017, like literally playing like 6 lands in the lead up to Krakow, like winning, like the work ethic of history, to me, Astralis is like them skipping events and still being, you know, the best team in the world, and taking the approach they're taking now is almost like the same as like, I know what a good analogy would be, but like how when you hear these stories of how like old Pride fighters used to train, where they would like go into the gym and they would just like knock like each other out in training all the time.
It's the idea they overtrained a bit because they were that eager to be the best. Yes,
exactly. And so it's like it's like these crazy old war stories you hear from like SK and like Fnatic, like going week to week, like around the globe.
I mean, MIBR's done it this year already. They've gone to pretty much every event they could, right?
I mean, but look at the difference in that, though. I mean, look at an MIBR that has struggled to show any kind of fucking improvement whatsoever, and then you look at their schedule, and I don't think it's that much of a leap to say, well, there's some correlation here between going from China to Brazil, back to China.
When I make this statement, Moses,
like, that's so fucking insane.
This statement is crucial, which is this. I totally agree with you. If there were, like, okay, I counted it up. I think over this, like, 3-month span I'm talking about, there was something like 7 tournaments. Like, 3 were Blast, 4 were other tournaments. And, you know, of those 7, I absolutely wouldn't expect anyone to attend all of them. In fact, I'd probably say if you're a top team, you should probably pick about half of them, 3 or 4, and go and do those. So here's the problem. I totally agree with you on burnout. I actually think those old teams Max is talking about, in fact, that's why he made the analogy, by the way, of the old Pride fighters basically having, like, sparring that was like a fight, is obviously, objectively, it's not a very good approach. Like, you're taking way too much damage, you're wearing yourself out. You want to like train lightly and then peak at the right time, etc. So the problem is, I totally agree with you on that, Moses. It's just that if the choice you then made was the only events I did go to were the ones with the more limited format, that will hurt you. You see what I mean? Like, the difference is either there's 2 ways this could have been fixed. One is Blast just had a better format, which actually, you know what? This is the saddest thing about this people don't get. I would still have issues about industry stuff there, but I wouldn't give a fuck about the Astralis angle if this format was sick at Blast. It was like, you know, it was even just like a DreamHack Summer or whatever. If it had the same format as that and you had to win a bunch of playoffs, I would say no problem. You're still number 1, still big events. Their problem is they simultaneously went to the smaller events and skipped all the events that had what I consider the big formats, you know, the good formats. So it's like all the factors combined. That's why I say, I know on the surface, the title of the video sounds crazy, like the era's over, because obviously they could win every event this summer. Of course, they're probably favourites too. But if you just look, they themselves, through a mixture of business and, as you say, you know, probably wanting some time off after such a big schedule, they unfortunately created a whole bunch of circumstances, which if you add together, I find it hard to argue they have an era still.
See, I think they still have their era. I wouldn't consider their era over by any means. And I think part of that is I'm a little bit more lenient, obviously.
Let me ask you a question. Let me just ask you a question, okay? If they'd gone to IEM Sydney and they'd lost to Liquid in the final, and they'd gone to Star Series and they'd lost to Na'Vi in the final, so I'm giving them second places here, would their era continue?
Yeah, I think so.
So for me, it can be your era even if you're losing the majority of the events.
I think, listen, they were so dominant for so long, right? How long does it take for a team to establish an era, right? It takes like 6
Probably
months
at least
of them
6
winning
months,
everything. Yeah. So I don't see how we can, we just finished anointing them after the major as the greatest CSGO team of all time. And I don't think it's reasonable to take that era away from them based off the fact that they have missed these events.
Well, let me just
over
clarify.
The span of like 2 months.
Just because the way you phrased that, people might be confused there. I'm not taking their era away. Their era happened. Like everything that happened to now, you know, like my point isn't that like it ruins what happened before. Obviously, no. Like that all took place. But my point is like, I don't think. I'll put it this way. I don't think. Here's maybe the easiest way to say it. I don't think eras have inertia. Like your era, the second you start losing, your era's just over. Like you know, like Nip didn't get to say for like 8 more months afterwards, well, we did win pretty much everything for the 2 years before. It's like, well, no, mate, the second your era's over, it's just over. So that's actually the harsh thing about eras. Like, I think really I'd describe it like this. I think also part of the problem with this discussion is people are mixing up world number 1 and era. Like, certainly, none of the other teams have done enough to definitely displace Astralis as number 1. Like, it's not like Na'Vi did go and win every of the other events. And, like, you know, now it's like, well, is it Na'Vi? Is it? No. Astralis is world number 1 still, barely. But for me, the era angle's like, I think it's very tenuous. Because, like I say, put it this way, if this was the first 3 months of a future era, be a pretty fucking whack start to an era. Just 3 blasts where you win 1, you come second at the other, you don't make the final. That ain't a very good start to an era. So, like Max said before, I feel like you've got to be consistent on all the criteria. Like at the beginning, the middle, the end. Like it has to be the same criteria at all points. We can disagree on this though. It's fine.
No, I actually think that is probably the most impactful point that you just made about the inertia that I probably heard to the Astralis era ending. Because I always thought it was bullshit, but that one actually makes a little bit of sense. So that's kind of cool.
And to like,
because for example, like just to very quickly give you an analogy, right? Think about when, for example, SK famously won ESL Cologne, right, the second major, and then after that they didn't win any more of the events. They were always second or top 4. So here's the thing: they held world number 1 for quite a while longer, obviously, because like you're saying, that does almost have an inertia because you get to count past results. But the point is, when they just couldn't win those events anymore, I think most people would say their era was over at that point in time. You know, when you're losing the Cloud9 and then nip the next tournament, then you know whoever it is.
But that's also kind of unreasonable as fuck because SK is often given 2016 as their era, but they only won the majors. They didn't win much around the majors.
I've got a problem with this whole angle. I should do some content on this really to expand it. But basically, here's the quick version, Moses. First of all, they did win 2 majors. And those 2 majors were pretty close together. So that's different even than just like 2 that, you know, are a year and a half apart. Secondly, it's not like we only count the majors. Well, all those fucking top 4s and stuff they had before and then afterwards, I think you collectively put it together as a body of work, you know. And then also there just weren't that many tournaments. Like even, for example, they didn't win ECS before the major. Well, they came second. Still pretty fucking good, you know. Like their actual body of work.
They also bombed out a group stage in Malmo.
That was one of the few times that ever happened. That was one of their few bad ones, mate. So it's very rare that team had bad tournaments. I'll say that. They were nearly always top 4 finals most times. So I'll agree with you. It's the weakest of the eras, but it's also propped up by 2 majors. That's pretty fucking good.
The terminology we use for era is always a little bit subjective, right? There's no agreed upon.
There is no rule on that. Like I can tell people,
general. Yeah,
we've come a lot further in CS:GO on this sort of terminology than we ever were in 1.6. Like the whole point is, here's the other thing as well. In a game like 1.6, you mainly only knew it was someone's era. This is why it's an interesting topic when it's sort of almost over. Like, you can only really see it when it's, like, at the end. Like, all right, that's what they accomplished, right? And then usually, because of how fucking hard it is to accomplish insane streaks, usually it ends as well, you know? It's just, like, it doesn't keep going for 2 years. Like, that's actually the other factor to the Astralis angle that we can maybe bring up, which is, I don't personally have any actual vitriol to Astralis players. Like, I even think on a lot of the business angles, they are just either naive or they just believe what they were told. So I don't even have a problem with some of that. Like, for example, I can tell you, there's a lot of businessmen are smart enough to know how to sell an idea. Like, they don't tell you, do this because, you know, I want to, like, disrupt ESL having a top team at event X. No, you tell them, you know how you guys were always saying last year, like, you need more time off and, you know, we need, like, chances to recuperate. Well, let's do it. Like, let's make the blast, like, our focus for this month. And then, you know, we'll, in the summers when we'll do the other events, you know, we'll like, you know, Dupree's had his issues. Obviously, Device is ill. Let's give them all a bit of time to chill. We're still number 1. Don't worry about that. And then after that, we'll go and we'll do. So that all sounds great. But I will say the one part I am annoyed at them is they're the only team, except for I actually made this point on by the numbers. There's some 1.6 teams did this because people were a lot more immature back then. But in CSGO, all of the eras ended because the team just couldn't win anymore. Someone else beat them. They came second. They came top 4. The problem with this one is Astralis didn't really get displaced. I know they just lost to ENCE now, but that's not really the reason why they're in trouble or anything. Like, they just didn't play enough. They chose to take time off, which, by the way, is legit because they did have a really sick era. Like, they was insanely dominant. So I don't even blame them if they say voluntarily we just choose. I mean, they've got a lot of extenuating circumstances to end it. It's just that sucks as someone who loves, like, the cool historical aspect, you know. Like, I wanted to see how far that could go. Like this is the reason why I actually... You know what, I'll say, in the very early days of this Astralis lineup getting to number 1, I probably did hype them a bit at the beginning because they hadn't shown it as much as they have now, obviously. But the reason why is exactly this. When I saw that, like, a bad tournament for them is, like, make the semis and barely lose in 3 maps, I was like, holy shit, these could just go forever. These guys could have, like, 2 years at number 1. These are going to break every rule of making a team. Because normally,
they still can,
they still could. You're right, and this would just be a weird blip that everyone would discuss, like the what if of the spring or something, you know. Because I agree, this is the only team I've ever seen in history where they weren't like reliant on a specific player being super sick every time, a specific map. And so the amount of things that can change and they can adapt and still be number 1 is fucking bonkers. Like, I give them full props for that.
Oh yeah, we haven't even seen them like need to like really sort of like massively pivot under the pressure of losing their number 1 spot. It's just like they're just like continually just like blasting out the best of like hits of Astralis, just like tournament after tournament.
Unfortunate
like,
pun, but yeah, well done.
Yeah.
God fucking damn it.
But Yeah, and so it's like we haven't even need to see them like suddenly like do the thing they did in the previous Astralis lineup when suddenly like Zipnix is under pressure for being cut and he needs to like step up and then adapt his own game. It's like they just continually just win, and so there's the two very different sides of a team when they're in the super dominant like era fashion, and then when they're on their back, when they're on the back foot.
By the way, just as an aside, how disgusting is it that even if, let's say tomorrow, for no reason, one of the Astralis players just woke up and they were in an insane slump. Think about like when Dennis was in NIP towards the end, like, you know, like 5 months ago when he was in a really bad slump. Let's say one of them woke up and he was in a slump like that. And you literally know Valde is sat over in that North office just waiting for that phone call, and you can just start a new fucking potential super team up. Like, that's so sick, isn't it?
Just looking over a stadium with a tear in his eye. Just
North is never letting Valde go. You get that.
They're probably not. I get what you mean. But put it this way, these miracles can happen. Things can happen. I would imagine they have him under a very nice contract, though, put out with like a solid, like I bet it's got like a year left.
Yeah, you won't even be upset that he never leaves. Yeah, he's great.
Sure.
He's chilling.
Right, what about this then? Normally we don't like address news as much because obviously it's very fleeting, but I thought an interesting piece of news to address was this Faze move, where Faze has decided to terminate Adren. Obviously he technically was on trial. If you remember, he used to do interviews at most of the events that sounded like he was on fucking death row. Like, I don't know how much longer this will last for. Like, what the fuck? This is a weird flex, but okay. Like, I was like, what the fuck? And anyway, obviously in the background lurking, they themselves have addressed many times, including Nico, like, you know, it's a temporary thing, him being the in-game leader. So even though I've just set it up there, like, Adren wasn't that great in the team. He was pretty underwhelming. Nico obviously is an amazing fucking individual player, but probably shouldn't be the in-game leader. Somehow, that equation, imagine me on a whiteboard, like, +1, carry the 2, then do the percentage factor of that, equals, we need Neo from Virtus Pro. Like, I don't know, at the end I'd go, can I go over that working out just one more time? I feel like somewhere in there, did you like add when you meant to subtract? Like, how at the end did you get to, can someone go and get Neo, who nobody else in the world wants, isn't even in the next best Polish team, and can we not only sign him, but he's the in-game leader? Now that's fucking bold. In fact, I'll start this off with a very interesting factor that Richard brought up on By the Numbers. And it's one of those examples of where sometimes someone sees something where I didn't even see this at all. So when I made a video about Faze adding Neo, right, obviously I'm not a big fan of the move. I don't think it's that great a move. I don't think Neo's a very good state. Right? You know, there's a lot to be negative about. But one thing I thought actually was a vague positive was when I look at Faze, and I think Faze themselves know, we can't be like the Faze when Olaf and Guardian first joined. We're not just going to frag everyone. Like, that's not a way to play Counter-Strike. So I think they are trying to move towards a little bit more structure, hence why they want a real in-game leader, etc. Now, if you're going to go down that route, I can make a case to you. Virtus Pro isn't a bad model to follow. They had the same players. You knew exactly where the firepower came from. They weren't like the most tactical team, but they had tactics that worked very well for them, and they had a nice playbook of them. And they still had some brute force to them and power play. Obviously, it was kind of Virtus Pro's thing. So you didn't need the best tactics. You know, they're not like the Renegades and ENCEs of the world. But here's the thing that I didn't think of, which Richard fucking nailed, is, but he was only ever in-game leading 4 people. They never changed players. I didn't think of that, actually. That is a pretty significant thing when you evaluate IGLs. Because really, you look at a lot of the other great IGLs, the first thing you say about the other ones is, give this guy anyone, you know, give God B anyone, Fallen, MSL. It's like, you can't say that about Neo, actually. So, Max, come on, where do you start with this? Neo or Neo to Faze, what do you think?
Well, first of all, like when I interviewed Olaf Meister at Sydney, I was like talking about the move with him. And it doesn't show up in the like transcript of the interview I did with him. But I asked him, I was like, you know, obviously you're probably trialing different players and you just have to ask the question, the Hail Mary thing. I'm like, could you reveal the names of anyone you're trialing? And it's like, he literally just looked at me and he laughed. And I could tell in his head after the Neo move, it's like, kid, you wouldn't even believe me if I told you. It's just like you have.
He'd be like, well, actually, Max, it's Neo, and you'd be like, right, if you're not even going to be serious in the interview, I'm not going to go on. I'm not going to be disrespected like this as a professional.
Both fucking professional here.
Exactly.
Like, I'm trying to make money. You're trying to make money. Like,
why are you just pissing in my face with a stupid pickup no one would ever do? Why would anyone get that old broken ass play? It wasn't even good since 1.6. Like, and then he's like, no, we really are picking him up. That was just something Thorin told me.
I'm sure.
Come on then, what do you think of this move?
Well, like the theory is the only like good part about the move is that it like unshackles Nico.
Yes.
And so you sort of have to like weigh up in your head the like net benefit of essentially reducing your overall fragging power in like having Neo, who's not gonna like be insane, for the benefit of maybe getting like Nico to unlock a couple more levels of his play and be dominant individually. And so if you're trying to like play the devil's advocate and advocate for this move and say it might be a good thing, then you have to look at the angle like maybe Faze is a team that's historically been characterized by having like too many stars on the one team, there not being enough space for certain players to dominate. And so maybe actually like taking a step back and removing someone like Adren, who is probably going to be one of these players who, even though he's not like calling like this is my shot, I'm going to push this, he's still a player that is individually strong, is going to want to play his own game. And so maybe removing him and bringing someone in that is clearly going to be super flexible and is going to do whatever is asked of him while also taking the burden off the star player, then maybe even though you lose IGL, even though you maybe lose like a piece of individual skill, what you gain in like alleviating the weight on the other people creates like a good team in that sense. And so, yeah, I don't know, like overall, I think Faze, like you were saying before, I don't know if they can be this team who just tries to frag the fuck out individually. I think teams in general need to have...
I don't know if anyone can. It feels like... That's why when I made that little documentary, The Faze's Failed Era, I kind of actually don't do it as a diss. I feel like it's amazing they came that close. I think that's fucking insane.
And I think when you look at the teams that are on the rise now in general, you have to and that's what's so interesting. And there was this AZS on Twitter, he made like a sick tweet, which was it was a quote tweet of the gold medal in the rhythm gymnastics in the Olympics from like 1964 versus the gold medal in like 2019. And then it was like you look at it and it's like black and white and it's some chick.
What was the
like
difference? Like one was just basic and the other was super sick or something.
Yeah, and then the quote tweet was like get right in 2013 versus simple in 2019, right? When it's like the evolution of the competition sort of like puts extra pressures on its top like apex predators to be more dominant individually, and then you can apply that to like teams in general. I think
we're talking about gymnastics and apex predators, and I got no idea what the fuck's going on anymore.
Keep the fuck up. Like
I'm trying to here. I'm losing my mind.
Dude, Apex Predators is that new game all the streamers are playing. Where you get to choose a dinosaur. And go on, keep going.
What I'm trying to make is that like Faze, there's more demanded of Faze to be a top team now than ever before. And so if that means that like they need to pivot away from individual skill and they need to start like looking to tactics and they start needing to like look to playing greater than the sum of their parts, then that might mean like giving up individual skill in like Adren and bringing on someone like Neo. And so like I get the move overall, and I think that it probably could like surprise a lot of people, especially if Nico gets to some insane individual level on top of Neo bringing in something. And you have to remember like got YNK as the coach now as well, and he hasn't had like Faze haven't had a lot of time in general to practice together as a team. And so hopefully like Neo and Yang can bring something together that like helps the structure and helps support like the net gain of Nico's individual skill with Neo coming on, hopefully. That was rambly as fuck. I'm sorry.
It's all right. Can you still hear us, Moses? Oh yeah, he took the headset off. Right. What do you think, Moses? What's your take on the move?
Oh, all right. I'm going to say this as someone who's been a fan of Neo, and probably more than any other player in my years as an analyst. I have tried to like
literally the CS equivalent of I'm not racist, but
yeah. This move is awful, and I say that wanting Faze to be successful, wanting Neo to be successful, wanting Yanko to be successful, wanting Nico to be successful. I think this move is not good in any way. Like you said, there's only maybe actually I shouldn't say that. There's two positives that may come from this. One is obviously it unlocks Nico from having to worry about in-game leading. That one's obvious. The second one would be if it changes some kind of mentality in the team. If Neo can come in and be a personality that's going to inspire more work ethic, more he is a very quiet.
I could see him being someone who could help Yanko in that sense. That's not a bad fact, actually.
This move, to me, is so high risk and low reward that it doesn't actually make sense. Because even if Neo comes out and he turns out to be this great in-game leader and he helps them improve tactically, I don't see how this team is still going to be contending for championships that often. I don't think this actually improves the rate at which they can go deep into events. And here's the issue. Outside of that, this team needs someone who can actually initiate and create things, which is wild to say on a team of Olaf and Guardian. But if you watch these T-sides, the only person doing something that's trying to create openings is Nico at the moment. And I don't see how Neo is going to change that. The other guys with all their experience seem lost at times in how they want to attack parts of the map, how they want to gain map control. If I was FaZe, I would have been targeting someone like Golden. I know that sounds crazy, but that at least is an in-game leader who gives you freedom of individual skill, but is also willing to lead from the front. Like, he'll be an entry fragger, and he will actually try and aggressively take control for your team. And for me, when I watch FaZe at this point, how many more aging stars are they going to put on one team where you're going to say, can they get back to their old level? Now you have Neo, Guardian, and Olaf Meister, where you're all even Rain to a certain extent, although he's bounced back recently. Sure. But I'm just stuck wondering, when is this team gonna get younger? When are they gonna start actually trying to adapt? Like, when do they blow this up? Because this isn't working. Yes. And I don't think Neo brings enough change and brings that change quick enough for this team. Like, if Olaf and Guardian were still playing at a great level and they were going super deep into every event, I could see this being a good pickup where you're just like, let's bring Neo in. This lineup may have like 5-6 months or maybe one more major run in it to see if they can actually pull something off. Like, let's see if we can give it one last go. But that's not the situation they're in. For me, I look at FaZe and I'm like, when do they hit the rebuilding phase, right? Like, when do they hit the button that says we really need to rethink the approach that this team takes and what players we need to fill in that approach? So for me, this pickup it doesn't accomplish enough for me. It doesn't have enough power behind it. And I say that as someone who fucking loves Neo and loves everything he's done and loves Yanko and wants him to succeed as a coach and everything like that. But I don't see where the positives are past Nico getting more freedom, which he already essentially had because he was the in-game leader. He got to create his own freedom.
Yeah, and it's like, at what point, it's like the four-man core of Guardian, Olaf, Rain, and Nico is like nearly 2 years old at this point. And so at what point do you look at like the inherent structure of the team and stop doing like the revolving door of the fifth and like completely rebuild? Yeah, I totally agree. I completely agree with you, Moses.
Especially because, as you say, it's not even just explicitly that they're old. It's that they've got too many players who have the same profile, which is used to be really sick, even in this lineup, but isn't at the moment, and is unfortunately. Here's the difference between normal players and legends. The second a normal player becomes not very good, a great example would be like Kirby when he went to North. The second he became not good, everyone in the whole world goes, well, he's not good, and so until he does it again, he has to prove it to me before I consider him good. The problem with Legends is a Legend's name has fucking inertia. So as a result, when you look at this FaZe Clan team, they have way too many people where it's like, you look at them on paper and you give them the benefit of the doubt still. You go, but if he ever got anywhere close to good again. Like, the killer for me at the moment in their team is like, Olaf's been pretty bad this year generally. A Dren position wasn't really working out. Nico's absurdly good. Rain got hotter as as things started to go along. He's got his level back. And for me, Guardian is like, I think Olaf's the worst on the team, but Guardian is like in the weird spot where I actually think he almost like deceives you with the stats. Because what he does is every like 3 or 4 lands, he just does really well at one LAN, or he takes over one massive series that always sticks in your mind, and you go, oh, Guardian's still sick, though. He's still sick, isn't he? And then you forget that like he might have the next LAN, he might just do nothing at all. Because the thing that never made sense for me in this team is when Nico is as good as he is now, it's like simple in Na'Vi. It's like you actually are unfair to their team if you say, what else could they do to win? It's like, wait a minute, if that guy's already at like the best level an individual player can be, you already should be winning. Like, what the fuck? Something's going really wrong elsewhere in the team, actually. So I think if you look at FaZe now, dude, their profile is way more in line with like fucking Vitality, where you've got one guy who kills in every game and is legit a star, and then you've got all these names where the name value is amazing. And if they just do it every now and then, you give them the benefit of the doubt and you go, oh, NBK is still there, he's still sick. Oh, Apex, how could you ever get rid of Apex? That's the problem I think they're facing right now, is like, they've done the Nightmare move as well, which is they collected all those names. Like, it's easy if there's one spot you could, like a Nips 5th back in the day where you could just keep rotating that guy. There isn't really anyone right now. I mean, they've done it with Adren and Neo, but that's about it. I agree. At some point, unless something big happens, and like let's put it this way. The obvious end date for this, Moses, is let's make it the major. If he's on trial, the major's in September. Let's make it so if they haven't done anything big by then, it's time to like properly blow up. As in, I'm talking blow up as in it's just you, Yanko and Nico stay, and then we start from there and we build completely. Because I will add in, if anyone doesn't know, at the moment there is some sort of like slightly tense stuff going on at Faze, which is why the recent people they've been considering and picking up haven't been the big names. Like everyone might remember before they got a Dren, there was that rumor they were trying out Pronax. It's true, apparently, as far as I know. That's the point. Yeah. They weren't at a position they could get the big signings. It's not like last year where they were asking fucking Cold Zera and Sonny. You know, they were like the Faze you think of back then. At the moment, I think this is a period where it's like you have to just gamble. You're a bit of a budget team for the next few months. And this is their attempt at a gamble. I don't think they had many good choices, to be fair. I don't think they had a lot of options for this.
I like the golden moves that Moses said.
Yeah, I think that'd be really interesting. I don't know what it would take to get him out of Cloud9, but I mean, the other thing is, I think that is one caveat, is that we don't actually know who's available and for how much money and all that, and like how much it would cost to get that. But I think here's what scares me even more about this move is, let's say they go to the major and they just get eliminated in the quarterfinals, but they make it to Legend stage, right? And like obviously that's not good enough for this Faze lineup. Like their aspirations have to be higher.
That has to stop, doesn't it, Moses? Like, here's the thing. If you are like a team that you want to be number one in the world, saying we made Legends has to not be an accomplishment anymore. That has to be like the baseline expectation. That has to be the minimum, basically, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now here's the nightmare scenario. What happens if they get eliminated in the quarterfinals? They have the Legend spot and they say, you know what, this isn't fucking working. We have to blow this up. And they looking around and they're like, yeah, we like Nico. Rain is still playing really well. Everyone else is just like not really performing. You can't actually blow the team up in like a super meaningful way. You have to do it piece by piece because you want to retain the core for the Legend spot. And two players is going to drastically change the nature of the team, but you have to be very careful how you approach that once you have the Legend spot in your name, because like we think it's a nightmare now. Imagine this Faze team having to play in online qualifiers. Like that would be...
What's funny is, at the last two majors, Faze has limped to the Legends spot. So Faze and then IEM Katowice. And at both of them, I said this, because I was doing the No Majors Club with Richard, I said the exact same thing whenever we watched Faze. I said, if you are a Faze fan or a fan of Nico, you better be pulling that they don't make fucking Legends. Hope that they lose that last game. Like, that would have actually been the best thing for that team, because it would have... Like, what I like actually about pros is, as much as they can deny when they're playing badly and when they are bad against one team, you know, they can deny a lot of like single narratives, but even they know you can't deny just like repeatedly coming 9th place until like that's like the universe telling you like something that you think is going right is not going right at all. Like pros know that like losing is not acceptable. So unfortunately, I actually feel like Nico in a mad way is like they're actually a victim of how good he is as an individual player. Because if he just had like 2 tournaments off, we'd see that this team doesn't fucking work. Someone would have to make a key decision. I don't know what it would be, but you'd have to do something. You'd have to do something.
Yeah, if you were like an evil mastermind and you tried to bring down Faze, you're like, all right, this is going to be the perfect time to do it. We're going to get fucking Exist to play in this team. And then like Nico still frags the fuck out. It's like, damn it, that didn't work. It's like, let's put in Rubino, and then it's...
I don't know, bro. Exist is pretty wild these days. Exist had a resurgence.
But the point is, it's just like you can't you couldn't even kill Faze like if you like took out all of Master and put in like Rubino. Like Nico still frags the fuck out, and so that Chroman, sorry.
What the fuck happened to Chroman? Why didn't they just get him back? He was so good when he played with him.
I imagine he's thinking that, Moses, because when they signed Neo, I imagine he messages one of them like question mark, like what the fuck?
Am I a fucking joke to you?
No, they were literally like, yeah, bro, we literally would basically sign, like the number one criteria of any recruitment was not Chroman. Like what the fuck? Like he's even available like for free, I'm sure. Like. Jesus Christ.
Literally would like work on Faze for like volunteer money, like just. But
now here's the biggest problem with Faze, and this just highlights it, is after all we said, and I don't think we're wrong in our analysis of this move, but all that analysis is going to be wrong if the individual level of Olaf Meister and Guardian all of a sudden gets to a new level. So, but that's been the recipe for Faze for like 2 years now. So it has.
That has been what everyone said. Like every analyst desk, and no matter how bad they get, any analyst worth their salt has to say within the explanation of how bad they are, they've still got the ultimate puncher's chance when you have Guardian, you have Nico. Like you know, they could still win this game, of course.
Yeah, DreamHack Dallas, like you just like can already see it happening. Like Guardian just drops like 120 ADR in the semis, and it's literally just like, oh fuck, here we go again. Like, oh no, it's happening again. And then Faze like somehow win Dallas and then come last place at all the next tournaments. Easily could happen.
That's why, actually, if you're Neo, you don't even have to do anything individually. Think of the spot you're in. You've just replaced a Dren who wasn't very impressive and Carrigan who obviously individually was never going to be that sick anyway. So the actual level you have to play to isn't that crazy. And if anything, where you could really get the full-time contract is, like we're saying, if you can just in any way enhance the other players' play, that's pretty much what we've all been crying out for the last 2 years anyway in this squad. So... Yeah. Right, what about this? I thought another team we could talk about is... I actually want to talk about the two Swedish teams, NiP and Fnatic, because both of them... what's bizarre is, in the past of history, NiP and Fnatic were often when one was up, the other was down. It's like they took turns as to who was on top of the scene and who had the better players, etc. Right now, they both feel like they're in almost the same place to me, and they're similar. They're both really exciting teams. They're both really good teams. Like, if you want to watch a great best of three, put these two teams against anyone almost. You're going to get some great maps, a lot of excitement. They actually win at the moment off ridiculous, crazy individual moves, and some of the team play looks great again. I don't really know. One thing that's interesting is they don't really have sort of a god tier player at the moment, I've noticed, in any of the teams. It's kind of a weird wrinkle for Sweden, but whatever. They're both teams that for how bad they might have looked at the beginning of the year to some people, they look a lot better now. So, Moses, you obviously saw Fnatic. They were at the IM Sydney final, NIPs at all the Blast events. What do you think of Fnatic at the moment?
I still really like Fnatic, and I've really enjoyed watching them play ever since Chicago last year. They're that team that always inspires a little bit of hope in you and belief that they can be amazing, and they don't seem to always put it together. I think if we see that Fnatic that we saw at Sydney if we see that consistently moving forward this year, we're going to see them lift a trophy in 2019, which would be really, really cool. I think Brolin has come along nicely. If that was the coming out party in Sydney, if he plays at that level, he's going to be a really nice star by the end of the year, a really nice piece of this puzzle. I think the biggest difference right now between Fnatic and NiP is, to me, it feels like NiP has hit their ceiling. For Fnatic, it feels to me like there could still be some left. There still could be, they could reach a little bit higher. I still think this team has some to discover, because it feels like they haven't really unlocked Twist yet. As much hype has been around him in the Swedish scene for a number of years, he hasn't really broken out yet the way that Brolin did in Sydney. Now, the one exception to that as well is, how often are you going to see Exist play as good as he did in Australia? That was an insane performance that he had in terms of clutches, in terms of impact. But I love the fact that JW is playing really well. Yes. He's always been a key to unlocking this team, because he creates so much chaos and so much space for his teammates. Crims is playing consistent. Brolin was an amazing entry fragger. Exist was a great clutcher. But this Fnatic team, I think, still has some left in the tank. And they're sitting, I think they're right on the HLTV rankings. They're right at number 5. I think if they keep stepping up and they keep playing this way and they play that way consistently, I think they'll steal that number 4 spot for Na'Vi, and they'll be pretty dangerous to a team like ENCE at number 3. They'll be able to have some good series with Liquid and Astralis, but it's all about, with Fnatic, is that going to be a consistent level that they're at from Sydney? NiP, I think, is really exciting to watch. I think they're kind of stuck. I don't see how NiP makes it to the new level. We've seen this team and we've seen this lineup and we've seen them playing for some time. I don't know what the solution is. If they haven't found it by now, it feels like this lineup is kind of not necessarily run its course. I think they could still be deadly and dangerous, but I think they're more of that dark horse for a deep run that's going to spoil someone else's run. They're not a team that, to me, that feels like they can lift trophy.
What do you think, Max?
Yeah, no, for
either
sure.
team,
I definitely
pick
agree.
the one you want to go with.
Well,
first.
yeah, with Fnatic, with them having room left in the tank to still grow. I think the move to get Twist, and I wrote an article about it a week after the move, that I thought it was one of the best moves Fnatic could make, because when you look at what JW before Twist was sort of stuck in this weird limbo where Fnatic needed someone who could sort of be aggressive with the rifle to take map control, but they also needed that sort of AWPer who can make plays as well. And JW was throughout 2017 and 2018 mainly was sort of oscillating between these two roles. And so then Twist comes in, and what does Twist do? He's an aggressive player that can take map control with the rifle, or can play make with Norp. In my eyes, he's sort of just this guy who can tag out JW role wise, and he sort of gives JW space within the team to play more how he wants and less what the team needs, if that makes sense. And then,
by the way, as a quick aside before I forget this, since you're just referencing Twist there, the round where Fnatic played NiP at Sydney, Moses,
yep.
and there was that ridiculous situation where like they were all just like dying around the CT spawn on Dust 2 because there was like no time.
The one I tweeted when Twist jumps down?
So you know when Twist jumps down and does that like mad orb kill and then goes for the other guy? Apparently, this was said by like someone in Fnatic, apparently Twist actually didn't even know there was time left in the round to win. That's why he did it. He just thought, oh, there's no time left, so I'll just fucking just whatever, fuck it. And he obviously almost won the round. What a mad play.
Dennis that tweeted that.
Yes, that's right, yes.
Yeah, that was, dude, that match they had at Sydney is one of like was such an incredible best of 3 series.
Oh, yeah.
And like normally you could like criticize that kind of a play, but like with how crazy that series was,
the whole series was like that. Like that was an example. I'll give you a great example. This is where if you're a fan, I know you're used to analysts taking a play and saying like, oh, this was suboptimal, you know, like you should have done this. The problem with that is, right, that's a play in isolation that exists in a game state that makes sense. Like, you know where the CTs are, you know where the Ts are, you know what the tactic was, you know what the spot, right? In this type of a series that Fnatic and Nip just played, not every round, but you know, in the big rounds that you remember, some of these ridiculous plays, like there were rounds, I'm not exaggerating, where like 3 insane plays happened for different players in the same round. Yes. Like no one's ever played that game state that the third guy plays out there, where someone else just did 2 deagle headshots and another guy did a no scope, and like no one's preparing for that. Like there's no strategy there. You're just reacting. You know, it's going to be crazy.
So like. In the press room at Sydney, like people might not know, like, but in like esports press rooms, there's oftentimes like non-esports people there who are like local media or whatever who are just covering the event, and so they don't know how CS:GO works.
And were they like, is it always like this?
Well, yeah. They're literally just like, oh, like this game's pretty hard. Like CS:GO is a good esport. It's almost like the equivalent when you go to a bakery and there's like a sandwich and it has like all the sick shit at the front, and then you just bite into the sandwich and it's just like all bread. You know, it's like the best of 3 equivalent of that for IM Sydney. And that series was insane. Like just
also, I mean,
classic.
When that play happens, like it's so hard to criticize Twist for that because it is like they just played Overpass, which went to like triple overtime or something, and this was like the 30th round of Dust 2. Like motherfucker's exhausted, and that the intensity of the series, like fuck it, dude. That was so sick. I would have been upset if he didn't make that play. Looking back on it now, I'd be like, fuck you, make that play.
But then going back to talking about Fnatic more broadly, and in relation to Nip, I think I definitely agree with what you're saying. You have to remember that Fnatic have also like recently got a sports psychologist, and it seems to me that their base level of like chaotic play and looking to their individuals to open up space in the round and sort of like relying on looser play in general, as they always have, to close that game. It feels like that on some level. They're trying to not like transition away from that, but just add more layers to their game. Whereas Nip sort of as a team feel like they're more embracing that style and seeing their identity as a team to be, you know, this side that is like can have any one of their members frag the fuck out. Whereas, I feel like Fnatic is sort of taking a more long-term approach to their roster, and it feels like, you know, with like them picking up Brolin, making the correct choice in terms of who is playing where in terms of role, having the self-awareness to realize that they can't just play this individual style forever. There's more dot points to me in Fnatic that suggests that they'll either rise as a team like in the next 3 to 6 months, or at the very least like maintain their spot in the middle of the top 10.
I'll tell you what was the most impressive thing for Fnatic at Sydney, because we're all going to remember that Fnatic NIP series, but it wasn't even that. I think the fact that they forced Liquid into 5 maps was the most impressive thing they did at that whole event. Like, there's not any like super memorable maps on that, and obviously Cash helped them out, which is a map that I know from talking to Liquid and seeing them at DPL. They haven't touched Cash since Vertigo got announced, so I mean, that's a little bit of a gimme.
And, it just shows how like dumb best of 5s are, because it's like Twist said in his interview afterwards that he was glad that Dust 2 was a blowout, because it's like you sort of just get it overdone with quicker, and it's easier to reset when you're on the like 5th map of best of 5 series.
He is also a known pussy, I will say, so there is that. I'm just going to say it, mate. I'm one of the only people in the scene who can say something like that. So
timestamp that?
Not timestamp anything. It's wrong show. But okay. Unfortunately, Moses, we don't have a timestamp on this show. There's just me. I'm the timestamper. You know what? I choose to not timestamp my comment. No, because the point I make is a very brief one. Is like, I know what they mean by that, by the way. And here's the detail people don't know. I always mention this, to be fair. When I argue in favour of best of 5s, that's because I like best of 5s. I get that players don't like it. I just don't give a fuck. It's like someone saying, But sir, I don't want to work the night shift at McDonald's. Well, someone has to. That's a shame, isn't it? So we need our burgers. So I need a burger at 11:30. That's unfortunate for you that you want to be at home. Maybe you should have played more attention in school. So
Yeah.
I need you to be making a cheeseburger when I'm fucking wasted at 3 a.m.
Exactly.
Kiss your ass
Exactly.
in the McDonald's.
And you know what? That is exactly what a best of 5 is. It's like just the drunk as fuck burger at like 3 a.m. where it's like the best, like the 5th map. Is it really that good when you wake up the next morning? Like, I don't, for me, like, I don't see, like, I don't get that much out of best of 5s versus like a best of 3. And I don't necessarily know what it proves more so than a best of 3, especially when you see the dynamic of like, and I don't think that was like bullshit that Twists was like saying, oh, I'm like really glad we like lost. It's almost like when you like fall off of a skateboard and it's like, oh yeah, no, that was like meant to happen, you know, like I just wanted to make the next trick look even cooler, so I had to like fail here. But to me, like, it felt honest that he was saying that he was actually glad that it was a blowout on Dust 2 where they didn't get like a single round on T side and they just got clapped the fuck out. Because then on Inferno, because it'd be a different story if he says that they got blown out on Dust 2. And then like Inferno was like some hectic overtime map where they had to like grind back into the half and then like close it out barely.
Oh, I just realised you meant Twists for Team Liquid, not Twist for Fnatic, right? I actually didn't mean that he's a pussy. I meant the Fnatic one's a pussy. To be fair, the other one doesn't exactly look super tough, but I retract that statement. I just randomly dissed the other one for no reason. Then right, whatever, keep that in. It's funny.
But this part.
Are we time stamping it now, Doug?
No. Yeah. But like on Inferno, like after Dust 2, after they got clapped out on Dust 2, like they came out swinging. You know, they had like an insane pistol round. They got an 11-4 half up, and so to me, it makes sense that like they were able to mentally reset after Dust 2 and come back stronger. So yeah, I don't know. I forgot what the original point was, but fuck best of 5s. I like.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of best of 5s either, but this one was kind of interesting. It was kind of cool for it's kind of cool for 2 reasons for me. I like the fact that Fnatic put up a great fight, and actually, I didn't think there was a snowball's chance in how they were going to win Dust 2 over Liquid. So that's pretty cool they were able to do that. But I think the big story about this best of 5 was it gave Liquid every opportunity to collapse the way that they had done in so many other finals, right? Like they had every chance going down 1-0 first, responding a close, gritty overpass win, blowing out a Mirage, collapsing on Dust 2. They had every chance to just fold and have another final slip away. And the fact that they were able to prove it and win it in 5 maps was really nice. And I think that was a cool way for Liquid to get their first Premier trophy. But I generally do agree that I don't particularly enjoy best of 5s myself. I understand like the problem is when you have a good best of 5, like there's like
it's better than
series
anything
that goes
else.
all 5 maps, like it's so insane. And there's been so few of them that when they do occur, it's like this is amazing. But usually they are just like long drawn out affairs that have maybe 2 good maps of the 5.
I'm just gonna say, how many best of 5s did Astralis lose? 1. They lost IM City. That was it. They won all the other best of 5s. They never even went to 5 games. Cool. Get at me, bitch. How did they never go to 5 games?
Water is wet, sky's blue.
No, the point is, no one could make them go to 5 games. If everyone always makes this case, right? A best of 5 is just like a best of 3. Just skip 2 of the maps. Well, Astralis ain't skipping shit. So if your choice is watch them 2-0 someone or 3-1 them, I'll go for 3-1. I think it's more dominant. So whatever, that's an aside. Anyway, you will make rounding up your points about which is it Fnatic or Nip we're on now?
Fnatic.
Okay.
Like and to be honest, like I think like it does show the gap between Fnatic and Liquid. Like even though it was a full best of 5, it wasn't like a close best of 5.
It wasn't a close best of 5.
In a sense, you know, it's like Liquid just shit the bed on T side as they oftentimes do, and then they just dominated them on like their 2 stronger maps in Mirage and Inferno.
Yes.
And that's how I see the series. Like obviously you just give cash to Fnatic because like you're saying, like Liquid don't really practice that. I talked to Nitro in groups and he said that as well. So it was like it was unsurprising to me that it went that way. Overpass was interesting for a variety of reasons, but like to me the real series was like the last 3 maps.
You can also bring this full circle to the conversation we had at ENCE at the beginning of the show. It's like Fnatic, this was a great, really, really cool run from them. And obviously they had one at Star Ladder, but they're in that same position that ENCE was after the major. Is like, can they actually look like this again? Like, are we actually going to see this JW and this exist and how incredible they can play? Are we actually going to see Fnatic consistently getting to top 4s? That's
I've got to tell you, like, Here's the thing. Exists generally, as mad as this might sound to say, I think actually is a slightly better player than his rep currently is. Because I don't think he's a very good in-game leader, which is a problem because that's his role. But he does an okay job, and he always has been somewhat competent. Especially this type of a team. Like in this team, actually, is reminiscent of Nip. You just play off team play as far as I can tell. People do the roles they want to do, and then the best player has to carry. So it's not that dissimilar to an old Nips type team.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of like depth there, obviously. But I have to say, he wins way more clutches than he should. Like on paper, when you look at his skill set, you'd think this guy would get bullied. He always wins clutches. So I could somewhat give him leeway. The player I can't put my faith in, unfortunately, Moses, is JW. Because the amount of insane rounds he did in Sydney were fucking unlike. I'm not exaggerating. You could make a 5-minute movie just of him from that tournament. It'd be very legit. So my problem there is, that's what always happens with JW. He has the tournament where you believe and you go, holy fuck, he's back. And then the problem with that is, like, that style probably shouldn't even be consistent. I think it makes perfect sense. It isn't, you know.
But it's
you could make like a 30-minute video on JW about how he does everything wrong in like Counter-Strike theory. Like all of his decisions are wrong, but he makes it work. So fuck it.
He just has a sense for it that is uncanny, isn't it? Like, it's not even just doing stuff random. It's clear he has his own, like, perspective on the game. And there's a coherence to it. Like, he does things... That's what's so weird, right, is I almost feel like the player here's an analogy, right? Because it's going to be a very initially abstract one. I'm going to compare JW to Cold Zero, right? Obviously, stylistically, you couldn't get two players further apart. But the way in which they're the same is you almost can't prepare to play against them except by playing against them, because nobody plays the way that they play. Like, Cold Zero wins so many clutches that look like he's playing against like a Face It level 3 player or something. Because he just, like, it's like people because they know he's so good at clutches, they overthink what he's going to do, and he ends up just doing actually very simple moves that just win him 1v1s and he wins the 1v3. Like, in similar fashion, you know in the back of your brain when you play JW, could do any crazy shit now. Could just be pushing behind me with an op, but somehow you never believe he is until he pops up. You're like, what the fuck? He was pushing behind me with an op. Like, it's like somehow you can't make your brain believe that, because all your other practicing, your whole world, all your feedback is telling you, like, don't play that way, basically. Like, no one's going to do that. Of course, don't worry about that. No one's going to be hiding in that spot. No one's going to push through this smoke. In a way, you'd almost trained not to play against this guy.
Yeah, and like for that exact reason is why I think like Fnatic over like, because they match up with that style, I think, pretty well against a team like Liquid or ENCE, relatively speaking, in Astralis. When you look at these sides that sort of lean more into the realm of structure, and they're sort of, if you can match them individually, are more susceptible to folding under the pressure of like loose play. Because for example, someone like NRG, like Fnatic match up really well against, because NRG is the type of team who sort of is like is going to sit back and try to feel you out, and Daps is going to call around the matchup rather than around themselves. And so if Fnatic is fragging the fuck out, then it's like NRG are very susceptible to being to losing in that sense. I think
it's similar to how back in the day when the Astralis first had Kirby and Glaive, that lineup that themselves was a very good team. That's why Virtus Pro was in a way like the hardest team for them to play, because they would just try and play the structure style. Everyone else let them do it, and then VP would just be like, we'll just, Pasha's going to randomly push here, or Bialy's going to come behind you, and that would really throw them off.
And if you look at the way like how ENCE beat Astralis on Nuke, they were playing confidently, they were making plays, they're playing forward, and they're making the game scrappy, and they're forcing like a more structured team to sort of like get in the trenches and just like start throwing bombs essentially. And to me, Fnatic is that type of team that they'll just take your plan and they'll force you just to do like bloody hand-to-hand combat and like a crazy best of 3. And I think there's a lot of, even though it's like not like for all the times you're trading punches in that sense, and you're just like in the pocket swinging, for all the times you get knocked out, there's a chance that you like land something as well. And given the caliber of skill they have, when they do land that knockout punch, you can, I think you can beat a team like Liquid in a best of 3, honestly, if you're Fnatic. And I think, they match up favorably. No, not favorably, but they match up better than they should against a lot of the teams in the top 5 versus Nip, who I don't think I could necessarily say the same for. I think they have the same type of strength in that sense, that they can play loose and scrappy, but not to the same extent that Fnatic has with the breadth of skill they have on the roster and how they can pressure you with players like JW and Twist, and like even Crims can play like very aggressively on CT side, but in his own sort of way.
Sure. I definitely agree with Moses on NIP. Like, the thing with NIP is it's actually even reflected in their map pool. Basically, they have like a pretty good win rate, like 50 to 60% win rate on almost every single map. Almost every map. I think the only one they didn't was like Inferno or something, the map they don't play. Like, every other map, as you'd expect, that's why they're the ultimate like coin flip team, because they could win your map and then lose theirs. So as a result, no wonder they're making amazing series when you play. No wonder they sometimes have a crazy run that looks awesome, and then the next event are just an average team again. I think also if you look at the lineup of NIP, like there's a lot of pressure on people like Rez to play really, really well. There's the difference between the two teams. If the best player of Fnatic is Crims and the best player of NIP is Rez just doesn't even have the role to be as consistent as a Crims can. Yeah. Like, a Crims can give you that every game. It's going to be harder for a Rez no matter what. So the only factor for NIP I give them as an outside chance is Dennis just came back. He looked great at this one Blast event. If he can somehow be good, maybe that can do something. But the problem is they're not going to be like some super great tactical team. Like, the thing about them is I actually like where they're at the moment. If they're going to hold on to Get Right and Forest, being actually a pretty good dark horse team that can make great games, about the best you can hope for. That's just, it's not reasonable to expect to be number one or go for the title, you know. I think they're a decent spot.
They beat like ENCE on Nuke at Blast, right? Like,
yes,
so
yes.
They're not like, and convincingly, and like the T side. That
also, who was it? Was it you who said this, Max? But I actually totally agree. Also, that the role of an NIP is like, I think, it was Moses who said it, is like their job is to fuck someone else's tournament up. Yes. Like, here's the difference: they could play like Team Liquid, maybe even Astralis, and maybe have a miracle game and beat them. The difference is they would then lose the semi, the final to fucking Fnatic or something, you know. And then the idea is, if you're like Team Liquid or Astralis, you're like, really? So you just gave the whole tournament to Fnatic? It's like, yeah, they did. Yeah. That's kind of who they are.
I mean, all you need to know about NIP is they beat ENCE and Madrid 16-5 on Nuke, and then the next game they lost to Giants 4-16 on Nuke. Like,
yes, that's a pretty good way to say it.
That's NIP in a nutshell right there. It's just like, please God.
But I think there's like a lot of merit to it. Like, obviously, if you're one of the players in that team, you just want to kill yourself after every single tournament in that sense.
Yeah, because you want to see progression. You want to believe you're going to get back, but you're not. Let's be real.
You want to be consistent, and you want to be like a top 5 team.
Yeah.
But like, as a fan or like an analyst of the game, there's like a merit to a team that literally is almost like a character in a story.
Of course,
you know, they literally fulfill a narrative archetype in like the trickster. You know, they're just like like Rez is going to drop 30 this game, and he's just like suddenly like upsets a fucking like high level team. So I think there's like at the very least like a narrative element to why
it's a more advanced version of why I actually really liked that Tai Lu team that they had like a year ago, if you remember when that was it. Because I always used to stress this to people. Don't worry, I was definitely never saying they were going to win anything or be a top team. That is not what I mean. I just really liked how ridiculous their playing style was. So my whole thing with them was like, it's like having a little kid who's a troublemaker. It's like, yeah, go out there and fuck someone else's life up. Like, go on, son. Go and throw a fucking wrench into this machine, blow it up. It's like they were almost like corporate espionage or something. It's like, right, let's see if these guys can just bang out Na'Vi for no reason in a best of one and then lose to literally anyone on any map in the very next game. Like, that obviously sucks to be that player, because you want to believe like, we just beat Na'Vi, we're on a path. Like, where are we in the movie? Like, is this like scene one? It's like, this is Groundhog's Day, motherfucker. You just wake up every day and it's the same shit over and over again.
I've been caught in that trap so many times where I'm like, all right, well, Tai Lu's had some pretty interesting best of one upsets. Certainly at this point they can put together a full best of 3, and then it's like, no, goddamn it.
Well, yeah, it's one that, like,
still no.
Dude, Tai Lu beat Astralis in a best of like they took a map of Mirage off Astralis.
Fuck
like,
yeah, they did.
Like, how I don't know, man. Like, that shit's crazy to me. Yeah, that's actually a really good analogy. Like, where they're at in their own movie in their head, you know, they think they're like the hero who's like, it's like towards the like climax of their narrative arc, where like they take a map of Astralis and the next step is they actually beat Astralis in a best of 3. But
they're basically how every underdog story should be if it wasn't made by Hollywood.
Yes.
Like, the underdog eventually just gets banged out, just gets banged the fuck out.
Exactly.
This video was kindly supported by Wendelful, Butt Pounder 420, Dean Tanglis, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, JDubs, Chi Mao, Daniel Olivar, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, NateDOhDoubleG, Alexander Rao, and a special thanks go out to Jerky's Minion, weixz, don't know how to say that, it's like a Chinese name, and Max Laine. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for some of my upcoming content? It's going to be a big feature in the next few months for me. Well, my Patreon, that's a feature. Do you want to ask me a question in my monthly AMA? Would you like teasers for my upcoming content? Find out who the next guests are. Maybe you want to take part in that monthly donator discussion with me. Well, if you want any of the above perks, put your money where your mouth is. Support me via the Patreon link below and join the Scrilluminati today.